The smell of fresh paint and cut wood was the smell of our future. It filled my lungs, a sweet and chemical promise of everything my fiancé and I had worked for. I stood in the middle of the empty living room, the floorboards bare and dusty under my feet, and I felt like I could finally breathe. My fiancé's hand was in mine, her fingers laced through my own. Her skin was warm and familiar. "Look at this place," she whispered, her voice bouncing off the naked walls. "Can you believe it is really ours?" I squeezed a hand. I could believe it because I remembered every single sacrifice that got us here. The skipped vacations, the packed lunches every single day for 2 years, the second jobs on weekends, saying no to nights out with friends because we had a bigger goal. All of it was for this empty shell that was about to become our home. She pointed to the far wall, her eyes shining. "The big, soft sofa will go right there. The one we can both nap on." I grinned. "And the Christmas tree will go in that corner," I said, pulling her closer. "We will have to get a big one to fill the space." We walked through the rooms, our footsteps echoing, painting the air with our dreams. This would be the kitchen, where we learned to cook together, probably burning a lot of dinners in the process. That would be the bathroom, where we would fight over the sink in the mornings. And that room, the small one at the back, that would be the nursery. We had not talked about that part out loud much, but it hung there in the air between us, a beautiful and unspoken secret. This was it, the starting line, the moment our real life began. I pulled my fiancé into a hug, right there in the center of the empty living room, and I felt like the luckiest man alive. The dream was no longer a dream. It was a house, and it was ours. That was when her phone rang. The sound was harsh and out of place, cutting through our perfect moment. She sighed, pulling away slightly to dig her phone out of her pocket. "It is my brother," she said, her brow furrowing just a little. I felt a tiny and instinctual knot form in my stomach. I tried to ignore it as she answered, "Hey, what is up?" I could not hear his side of the conversation, but I could see my fiancé's face change. The light in her eyes dimmed. Her smile faltered and then vanished completely. Her shoulders slumped. "Oh no. What happened?" She listened, her face a mask of concern. "Do not worry," she said, her voice soft and soothing. "We will figure it out." "Of course you can. You are family." The word family hit me like a physical thing. That knot in my stomach tightened. She hung up and looked at me, her eyes wide and pleading. "He got kicked out of his apartment," she said, her voice small. "His roommate left and he could not cover the rent. He has nowhere to go." My heart sank. I could see the request coming from a mile away, and I did not want it to land. "He just needs a few weeks," my fiancé said, stepping closer and taking both my hands. "Just until he finds a new job and can get an apartment. He can stay in the spare room. It will be fine. I promise." I looked around our empty and perfect house. The spare room. The one I was secretly thinking of as a future nursery. The one that was supposed to be empty, a space for our future to grow into. Now, I was being asked to fill it before we had even moved in. I saw the love and the worry in her eyes. I saw how much she needed me to say yes. I did not want to be the bad guy. I did not want to be the fiancé who said no to family. This was our fresh start. I did not want to stain it with an argument before we even had a bed to sleep in. So I pushed down the unease. I bared the feeling that this was a very bad idea. I forced a smile. "Of course," I said. "A few weeks. No problem. He is family." The relief on her face was immediate and brilliant. She threw her arms around my neck. "Thank you. You are the best. I will call him right back." She bounced away, already dialing, her voice bright and happy again. I stood alone in the middle of our living room. The smell of fresh paint suddenly smelled a little sour. The dream felt a little less real. I had just agreed to the first crack in our foundation, and I did it with a smile. Move-in day was nothing like I pictured. I thought it would be chaos, sure, but a happy chaos. Pizza boxes everywhere, laughing as we struggled to get the sofa through the door, collapsing together in a heap of exhaustion and excitement in our new bedroom. Instead, the chaos felt heavy. Her brother was already here when we arrived with the first truckload of boxes. His old car was in the driveway, and his bags and a few cardboard boxes were piled in the hallway, right where we needed to walk. He was not helping. He was sitting on the one chair we had managed to get inside, looking at his phone. "Hey, guys," he said, not looking up. "Place looks good." My fiancé beamed at him. "Does not it? I am so glad you are here to help." He just grunted. I carried box after box inside, my back already starting to ache. Her brother did not offer to help. He just moved his stuff out of the way when we needed to get past, then settled back into his spot. The first meal in our new kitchen was a frozen pizza. We did not have a table yet, so we ate standing up at the kitchen counter. Her brother ate most of the pizza himself, barely talking, just shoveling food into his mouth. When he was done, he dropped his paper plate on the counter and wandered back into the living room, leaving his mess for someone else to clean. I caught my fiancé's eye. I raised my eyebrows, a silent question. Is this how it is going to be? She gave me a tiny and almost imperceptible shrug, a look that said, "Be patient." Later that night, we finally collapsed into our new bed. The room was full of stacked boxes, and it did not feel like ours yet. I could hear the faint sound of the television from the living room. Her brother was still up. The sound was an intrusion, a constant reminder that we were not alone in our home. "Honey," I said, my voice quiet in the dark. "About your brother." She cut me off before I could finish. Her voice was thick with sleep. "It is just for a few weeks. Be patient. He is having a hard time." She rolled over, her back to me, and was asleep within minutes. I stayed at the ceiling. The glow of the television from under our bedroom door painted a faint and shifting line of light on the floor. I listened to the muffled sounds of a late-night talk show, a sound that had no business being in my house. This was supposed to be the first night of the rest of our lives. The few weeks came and went. They slipped by like sand through my fingers, and with them, any hope that her brother was just getting back on his feet. The spare room was no longer a spare room. It was his room. It smelled like his cheap body spray and old laundry. His video game console was hooked up to our living room television, a mess of wires snaking across the floor I had once imagined as a clean and open space. The fridge, which my fiancé and I had stocked with fresh food for the meals we were going to cook together, was now crammed with his energy drinks and frozen pizzas. I would open it looking for the milk and just feel a wave of resentment. This was not our kitchen anymore. It was a shared space, and I was the one who felt like a guest. I started tiptoeing around my own home. I would get up for a glass of water in the middle of the night and find her brother on the couch, the blue light from the television flickering on his blank face. He would not say anything, just maybe give a slight nod. The house was never quiet, never truly ours. The happy life I had imagined was replaced by a tense and walking on eggshells atmosphere. I felt myself getting quieter, pulling into myself. My fiancée tried to keep things normal. She would try to start conversations about paint colors or where to hang pictures, but it felt like we were playing house, pretending everything was fine while a third person was constantly in the room, a silent and messy ghost. I knew I had to do something. I could not live like this, a stranger in my own life. I decided to talk to her brother directly, man to man. I waited for a day when my fiancé was out running errands. He was, as usual, on the couch. I took a deep breath and sat down in the chair opposite him. "Hey," I started, trying to keep my voice calm and friendly. I was thinking, I have a friend who manages a warehouse. They are always hiring. The pay is decent. I could put in a good word for you. He did not even look away from his phone. "Yeah, maybe. I will think about it. It is just that it has been a few weeks now. Your sister and I, we really need our space back. You know, to start our life together." That got his attention. He finally looked up at me, and his expression was not angry. It was dismissive, almost bored. My sister said I should not rush. She said it is important to get my head right before jumping into another job. Family is supposed to help you when you are down, you know. The words were a gut punch. Family. There it was again. But this time, it felt different. It was not just a word, it was a wall. And I was on the wrong side of it. He was not just taking advantage of his sister's kindness. She was actively making excuses for him behind my back. She was telling him it was okay to do nothing, to live in our house, to eat our food, while I was the one pushing for him to leave. The family card was being played not as a bond that included me, but as a weapon against me. I felt a coldness settle in my chest. I just stood up and walked away. There was nothing else to say. The breaking point came a week later. I had a terrible day at work. Everything that could go wrong did. All I wanted was to come home, to the safe place my home was supposed to be, and just be with my fiancé. I wanted a quiet dinner, maybe a movie, just to relax with the woman I loved. I opened the front door, and the scene just broke me. The living room was a disaster. Snack bags and empty drink cans covered the coffee table. Her brother was sprawled on the sofa, a video game blasting loud noises from the speakers. And there was my fiancée, moving around him with a trash bag, picking up his mess. She was cleaning up after him like he was a child. He did not even acknowledge her. He just kept playing his game. Something inside me snapped. All the frustration, the anger, the feeling of being an outsider, it all boiled over. I dropped my bag by the door, the sound making my fiancée jump. "This has to stop," I said, my voice low and tight. I looked directly at her brother. "We need to talk about a move-out date. Now. You have 1 week to find another place." The game sounds cut off. He finally paused it, looking at me with a mix of surprise and annoyance. But it was my fiancée who spoke first. "What? You cannot just say that," she said, her voice rising. "Honey, not now." "Yes, now." I shot back, turning to her. "Look at this. Look at what our home has become. He lives here. He does not help. He does not clean. He does not even look for a job. This is not what we signed up for." "He is my brother," she yelled, stepping between me and the couch, as if to protect him. "He has nowhere to go. What is wrong with you?" "What is wrong with me? I am trying to build a life with you, and he is living in the middle of it." "I am not kicking my brother out onto the street," she screamed, her face red. "He is family. You are just my fiancé. If you cannot support family, if this is how you are, then maybe we should not get married." The room went silent. The words "just my fiancé" hung in the air. They were so much worse than a shout. They were quiet and final, and they sucked all the air out of the room. I looked at her. I looked at the woman I had saved for years with, the woman I had dreamed with in this very room when it was empty. I saw the feast protection in her eyes, but it was not for me. It was for him, for the man on the couch who could not even be bothered to take out his own trash. The dream was dead. It was not just damaged, it was obliterated. In that moment, our beautiful house felt like a prison cell. I did not yell. I did not argue. I felt all the fight drain out of me, replaced by a cold and hollow emptiness. I turned around. I walked to the front door. I opened it and stepped outside into the cool night air. I got into my car and started the engine. I drove away from the house, the words "just my fiancé" burning in my ears. I did not know where I was going, but I knew one thing for certain. The life I had imagined in that house was over. As I drove through the dark streets, a strange sense of calm began to settle over me. The fight was finished. There was nothing left to argue about. She had made her choice, and I had finally heard it clearly. I was alone, but for the first time in weeks, I was not sharing my space with resentment. I pulled into the parking lot of a cheap hotel on the edge of town. I got a room for the night. The silence inside was deep and complete. I sat on the edge of the bed, the rough bedspread scratchy under my hands. The immediate storm had passed. The confrontation was over. I had left. But as I sat there in the quiet, a single and heavy question formed in my mind. A question about what I was supposed to do next, now that the only future I had wanted was gone. The hotel room was so quiet, I could hear the hum of the mini fridge. It was a plain and boring box with beige walls and a picture of a boat on the wall. There were no sounds of video games, no crunching of chips, no tense and unspoken arguments howling in the air. Just silence. It was so loud in its nothingness. My phone lit up on the nightstand, vibrating against the wood. My fiancé. Again. The screen flashed with a new text message. It was a long and angry paragraph. How dare you just walk out like that? You abandoned me. You left me here to deal with everything alone. How could you be so selfish? I did not answer. A few minutes later, another one came through. This one was different. Please come home. We can talk about this. I am scared. I love you. The begging tone was worse than the anger. It pulled at a part of me that was still back in that house, the part that remembered the smell of fresh paint and the feel of a hand in mine. But that part felt small and very far away. I picked up the phone, my fingers moving with a cold and mechanical certainty I did not know I possessed. I went into the settings. I blocked her number. The silence in the room felt heavier, but it was a clean silence now. The emotional storm could not reach me here. I was no longer angry. The red-hot rage from the night before had cooled into a hard and clear-eyed resolve. The order of things in our relationship had been established. I was just a fiancé. I was an outsider in my own home. And I was done. I sat on the edge of the bed and made 2 phone calls. The first was to a lawyer who knew about houses. I explained the situation as calmly as I could. 2 owners. Fiancé's brother moved in. Relationship broken. I need out. The lawyer listened, his voice dry and professional. He explained something called a partition action. When people who own a house together cannot agree, one can force the sale of the property. It sounded brutal and final. It was exactly what I needed. The second call was harder. It was to the woman who helped us buy the house. Her voice was bright and cheerful. Hey, how is the new house? Is it not wonderful? I cut in, my voice flat. I need you to list my half of the property. We are forcing a sale. There was a long pause on the other end of the line. Oh, she finally said, her voice soft with shock and pity. I am so sorry to hear that. Are you sure? I have never been more sure of anything, I said. And I meant it. This was the point of no return. I was not just leaving the relationship. I was systematically taking apart its physical symbol. I was taking a wrecking ball to the dream home. The legal process was set in motion faster than I expected. The papers were served. My phone, now unblocked for any potential legal messages, started blowing up again. This time, the texts were pure and raw fury. You heartless monster. You are destroying everything we built. How could you do this to us? To me. Another said, I thought I knew you. I thought you were a good man. You are just a coward. I read them all, each word like a little pinprick, but they did not hurt the way they were supposed to. The part of me that could feel that kind of pain was already gone. I blocked her number again. The emotional fallout was finding other ways through. Though, a mutual friend sent me a long and disappointed email about commitment. My own mother called, her voice full of worry, asking if there was not some other way. I held my ground. I found a new apartment, a small and 1-bedroom place in a building full of strangers. It was a blank slate. It held no memories, no dreams. It was just a place to sleep. I signed a 6-month lease, unable to think further into the future than that. I moved a few boxes of my clothes and important things. It felt like moving in the middle of a divorce, which I guess I was, just without the marriage certificate. One evening, a few days after I had moved the first of my boxes, I was in the new apartment. It was dark, and I had not bothered to turn on many lights. I was sitting on the floor, leaning against a wall, just staring into space. The silence here was becoming familiar. Then, a frantic knocking came at the door. It was not the polite knock of a neighbor. It was hard, desperate, and panicked. My heart hammered in my chest. I knew who it was. I thought about not answering. I thought about waiting for her to go away. But some morbid curiosity, or maybe the last ghost of that old feeling, made me get up and walk to the door. I opened it. My fiancée stood there. She looked terrible. Her face was puffy and streaked with tears, her hair a mess. She was hugging herself like she was cold. Okay, she sobbed, the word bursting out of her. You win. I will tell him he has to go. Tonight. I will do it. It is over. I choose you. She took a ragged breath, her whole body shaking. "I choose us." It was the apology, the surrender, the words I had been desperate to hear just a few weeks ago. They were everything I had wanted, but now, hearing them in this dim hallway, they felt hollow. They were the words of someone who had lost a war, not someone who wanted peace. They were too late. The battlefield was already scorched earth. I looked at her, at the woman I had once loved more than anything, and I felt nothing but a deep and hollow exhaustion. There was no joy in winning. There was no relief. There was just the sickening and final knowledge that some things, once broken, cannot be fixed. The door behind me, the door to my new and lonely life, was already open. I had already stepped through it. I stood frozen in my doorway, staring at my fiancée's tear-streaked face. Her words, "I choose you," hung in the air between us, a heartbreaking offering delivered far too late. I could see the raw hope in her puffy and red-rimmed eyes. She had finally reached her breaking point. She was ready to sacrifice her brother for me, for the us she had just recently told me was not as important as family. A storm of emotions churned inside me. There was pity for her obvious pain, a deep and aching regret for the future we had meticulously planned and then violently destroyed, and for a single and fleeting second, a flicker of the old love, like the last ember of a campfire trying to reignite. But stronger than all of that was the cold and unshakable truth. The trust was gone. It had been eroded day by day, chip bag by chip bag, until the foundation of our relationship had crumbled into dust. You cannot build a life on dust. I opened my mouth. I needed to tell her. I needed to form the words that would finally and gently end this nightmare for both of us. Words like "I am sorry," and "it is over," and "you should go." But before a single sound could leave my lips, a soft creak from inside my apartment changed everything. It was the sound of my bedroom door opening. Both of us turned to look. Standing at the entrance to the short hallway that led to the bedrooms was my new roommate, a woman I knew from the gym who worked in my office. She was rubbing sleep from her eyes, her hair a messy tangle, and she was dressed in nothing but a short and black silken robe that she must have just thrown on. She yawned, completely oblivious to the atomic bomb she was standing in the middle of. "Hey," she called out, her voice husky and thick with sleep. "Who is at the door this early? I thought the building manager was not coming until 10. The casual word and her appearance detonated in the silence. It was a simple and casual term, but in this context, with her standing there in a robe, her voice soft from sleep, it was the most destructive sound I had ever heard. I watched my fiancé's face undergo a terrifying transformation. The tears stopped instantly. The pleading vulnerability and the raw hope vanished, wiped away in a split second. It was replaced by a blood-drained and sheet-white horror. Her mind, already reeling from my legal betrayal and my coldness, connected the dots in the most devastating way possible. The speed with which I had gotten this new apartment, the immediate move, my refusal to answer her pleas, and now, a half-dressed woman in my home, calling out to me first thing in the morning. She did not see a platonic roommate who was helping me out with rent for a few months. She did not see a friend. She saw confirmation of her deepest and most painful fear. She saw the reason I had left. She saw that I had not just abandoned her, but that I had already replaced her. Her eyes, wide with a heartbreak so profound it was silent, locked onto mine. There was no anger there. Not yet. There was just a shattering, a complete and total destruction of everything she thought she knew. She did not wait for an explanation. She did not scream or yell or demand to know who the woman was. She did not give me a chance to say a single word. She just turned on her heel. And then she ran. She ran down the hallway of my apartment building without a single word, the sound of her fleeing footsteps echoing like gunshots in the quiet morning. I stood there, rooted to the spot in my doorway, the devastating misunderstanding solidifying like concrete between us. I knew, with a chilling certainty that settled deep in my bones, that this was an ending from which there could be no return. She would never believe the truth now. The story was written in her mind, a tragedy where I was the villain who had cheated and lied. There was no going back. It was over, truly and finally over. I closed the door and leaned against it, the weight of everything crashing down on me. The woman from the gym looked at me, her face now full of confusion and concern. What was that all about? Is everything okay? I just shook my head, unable to form any words. The fight for my old life was finished. I had my freedom and my quiet apartment. The legal wheels were turning to sever the last tie to the house and the dream it once held. As I stood there in the silence of my new beginning, I understood that some stories just end, not with a conversation, but with a slammed door and the echo of running footsteps. The path behind me was closed forever. The only thing left to do was to walk forward into a future I had never planned, wondering if the quiet peace I had fought so hard to win would ever be enough to fill the space where a family was supposed to be.